Brad Bird, My Cinematic Journey. Moderator, Stephen Weintraub from Collider.
How's everyone doing? Okay, so who is in here for the Directors on Directing panel? How many of you realized it was Johnny Depp as soon as he came out? Okay, be honest, it was a pretty good surprise.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, the footage for Resident Evil and Mayday, it all looks great, you know? But we're not here for that. We're here for one of my favorite directors. I honestly can't believe I get to do this panel with him. Ladies and gentlemen, Brad Bird. I'm like, I don't know where you're gonna sit. How are you doing, sir?
I am well.
So, I have a million questions for you. I wish this panel could go like 3 hours. But listen, before we get started, thanks to my friend Jeff, who is an amazing editor, we have a little bit of a sizzle reel for Brad, and I don't think you've seen this, so let's play the sizzle. I'm making sure you're okay with that.
Oh yeah, I've been sizzled.
So you were mentored by Disney legend, and I want to make sure I pronounce this right. What is one piece of advice from him that you still hear in your head when you're working?
He had this very intense kind of stammer that would happen to him, and he kind of swore more than what you would think of from Disney, but he would say, well, you didn't even explore the possibilities. And that's what it is. It's like if you're approaching something, you know, explore the possibilities.
So Family Dog felt radically different from much of the television animation being made at that time. What were you trying to prove with that project?
Just that it wouldn't be insane to let me make a film. That would be nice. Yeah, no, I was just, I always felt great sympathy for dogs because they kind of don't choose their family. They just kind of are plopped down in the middle of it. And I thought, what if you had a family that was kind of a nightmare and the dog were just, you know, wide open to them. So it seemed like a funny thing to do.
I'm sure a lot of you know, but Brad worked on The Simpsons early on. What did working on The Simpsons teach you about making a scene funny visually rather than relying entirely on dialogue?
Well, it was interesting because the writers were the best, but sometimes they would write things that make sense on the page but are really hard to convey visually. So that became a real challenge, and in order to meet that at the schedule that The Simpsons had, which was intense, I mean, you were always working on the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. You had to make decisions fast. And if I hadn't gone through that experience, I wouldn't have been able to make the movies that I did, many of which were done under a lot of pressure. And television, you can't do that because there's more episodes coming. It's like that thing from I Love Lucy where the conveyor belt with the candy. And if you delay on any one decision, a million other decisions start backing up on you.
So let's jump into something called the Iron Giant. The Iron Giant has become more beloved every year. What do you think, how did I word this? Why do you think audiences initially took time to discover it?
I think there's this thing called marketing that if you don't do it, it really hurts your film. And so I was really happy on the next project, The Incredibles, it got marketed. Yeah, and it made a difference, you know? But I can't really complain about it because people did catch up to Iron Giant. And I think they ran it for a couple of years. They ran it all day around Thanksgiving, like 24 hours, like one after another. And I think that was the thing that kind of broke through, is that people ran into it that hadn't seen it before.
How difficult was it to persuade a studio that an animated movie could deal seriously with fear, death, weapons, and personal choice?
Well, I would love to say, they didn't get it, man, but they did get the pitch. When I came in there and I read the book, which I thought was really poetic, but about halfway through the book, it becomes a contest between the Iron Giant and this spaceback the size of Australia, and they fly back and forth into the sun, essentially. And I felt like the story is with the boy and the giant, but when I came back and I said, I like this a lot, but I want to do something different with it, I said, what if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun? And to their credit, the people running the studio at the time, that got them, and they reacted to it, and they were taken by it. And that's not the usual subject for an animated, film.
Jumping into The Incredibles. Yeah, your resume is not bad. Pixar's early films leaned on cute characters. The Incredibles was your first attempt at photorealistic humans in CG. How much resistance did you get to that pivot?
Well, I wouldn't call them photorealistic because Bob's hands are like the size of trees and his feet are tiny. So it's very caricatured, but there weren't a lot of successful examples of human characters. There were like really disturbing versions of human characters back then. I mean, even Pixar did a short called Tin Toy that had a nightmare baby in it. And everybody who worked on it also goes, yeah, the baby was kind of a nightmare. So nobody's kidding themselves, but there was only one great example when I got there, and that was Jan Pinkova's short called Jerry's Game that won the Oscar. Yeah. So I was convinced that you could do really compelling, stylized characters and make them very believable. And his old man that plays chess against himself showed up in Toy Story 2 and really worked well. So it made me feel kind of assured that we weren't insane to try to make a movie that only had humans in it.
When you think back on the making of The Incredibles, how radically did anything change in that film? Because I know that with animation and at Pixar, things can go through huge changes.
Sure.
Do you remember, did the film go through any massive change?
Not massive. One thing that was an exercise that yielded good results was they said, what would happen if the audience doesn't, if you open the movie with them in their normal guise, not as superheroes, and they're trying to fit in, and then you reveal that they're superheroes. And I kind of argued with this a little bit. I said, look, you're going to have ads at that point. Everyone knows that the characters are going to be superheroes, so what are we doing? And they said, no, it's a good exercise. Try it. So I created this, I wrote this opening that had them just going underground. So Violet was a baby, and they were just going underground under the witness protection program. And then they kind of get discovered. And part of the thing is villains were trying to find them in civilian, to wreak revenge on them. So I had this villain show up. It was Syndrome, and he died in the opening sequence. So everyone, including me, liked him better than the villain I had. And so they went back to my original pitch, which was show them in the golden era and then jump 15 years and show them unfulfilled. And but with that character driving the villain plot. And there was this autobiography of Burt Ward, who played Robin on the TV 60s version of Batman. And he kind of said, I got more chicks than Adam West, and I sensed some kind of dark, resentment, from the boy Wonder, And I thought, that's a good angle for a villain, is to be kind of spurned at being a sidekick. So that, even though I didn't use that opening, I got the villain, and I got a good reason for the villain out of it. everything else kind of stayed much the same. But the villain changed, and he was a much better villain.
Coming from traditional animation and features like The Iron Giant, how did you adapt your directing style to Pixar's more collaborative, brain trust-driven process?
Well, you know, you get it. If you argue against notes, you get a reputation as being difficult. And the thing is they were shocked when I took notes. They were like, he took the notes. Like, he didn't mind the notes. I don't mind notes if they're not stupid. They're like, okay, yeah, bring it. But if you want me to do something that I think is stupid, I'm going to speak up, you know? So the notes that came out of the Brain Trust, a lot of them were really smart notes by people who have been in my position or are writers or something, problem solving in that arena. And so I didn't have, it was good to go through that process. And when I moved up from LA from Iron Giant, a lot of people on the crew were like, man, you're selling out to computer animation. And I said, I'm not going up there to be part of computer animation. I'm going up there because they protect stories. They make an environment where you can grow a good story. And they poke at it, they demand something out of it, but it's good, healthy, you know, stuff. And I don't know, does that answer your question?
100%.
Okay.
So now I want to bring up one of my all-time favorite films. It's something called Ratatouille. So I heard a story from a fellow, yeah, right there, from a fellow reporter. A lot of people don't know that you joined the film while it was in development. But someone told me that you had finished Incredibles and were on vacation when you were asked to come back and take over. And the reason they wanted you to take over is because you gave the best notes during a footage screening. Is that true?
It's somewhat. I can't say whether they were the best notes or not, but from my point of view, I had gone to all the Ratatouille Brain Trust meetings through the whole time I was doing Incredibles. And then in the last 6 months to a year, they let you kind of step back from those meetings in order to finish a film. And so I stopped going to the Brain, I made my last notes on Ratatouille and I stopped going to the Brain Trust meetings to finish the film. And so you do the film, you get that released, then it's award season, you do that whole thing, and then it was a big deal back then to do the Blu-ray release. And so it was one thing after another, and you're promoting. And I hadn't seen the film in a while. But, so I came back into it to my first note session, and I'd been away from it for a year. So my mind was frozen in time for the solutions that were given at that thing. And John was doing Cars, and right at the intense finishing point of Cars, and Andrew Stanton was doing the first boards for WALL-E. So they were both completely absorbed in that. So they were kind of a little more easygoing on it, and I was a fresh horse. So if something was not where I thought it was headed, I'd said, well, what happened to this? And what happened to that? And you know, blah, blah, blah. And so I was a little more aggressive about, you know, what needed to happen. And the next day, this film got screened within Pixar for the executive team, which was like Steve Jobs and some other people. And their problems were like the problems that I had enumerated the day before. So I think they felt like I was on some common ground with them. And they did get me on vacation. It was like I really wanted that vacation. And they kind of called, Steve called, and we talked for a bit, and I had worked with them a couple of weeks on tweaking the story. And he said, how did it go? And I said, I think it went kind of well, you know, I think they're in good shape. And then the next day, I got a call from Ed Catmull, and it was like, they said, we were driving around with the family, and they said, you could pull over. And so we pull over, the family gets out of the car, and apparently my youngest son said, "Is Daddy gonna lose his job?" And my wife said, "I think it's the opposite." And so that's what happened. Yeah, they invited me on board, and there it is.
So what was the actual state of the film in terms of like how much when you joined, you have those notes, like where was the film in that?
They had done 2 complete versions, meaning the full story beginning to end with storyboards and recorded sound, and they had gone out to some actors, and a lot of the choices that they had made I agreed with. Ian Holm was in there, and I thought Ian Holm was perfect. Brian Dennehy was in there, and I thought Brian Dennehy was perfect. They used Lou Romano. You know, he was a scratch voice that they all liked, and he was the art director on Incredibles. He played Linguini. And Pete Sohn did the voice of Emil, and he's directing Incredibles 3. So it's like, anyway, those I agreed with. They didn't have a voice for Remy. That they had another actor, I won't say who it is, but they had recorded some stuff with him, and I didn't connect with that, and I pitched Patton. And I felt like Patton was perfect, you know? And the other one was they had signed an actor that I think is very good, but he wasn't what I pictured for Ego. When it became my problem to make the film, I heard Peter O'Toole, and it was just like, nobody else. It's got to be Peter O'Toole. And thankfully he said yes.
I think we actually have a video question that's been sent in from a fan.
Oh.
I have a question for you, Brad. Have you ever thought of doing episodic TV, maybe even a miniseries? Your worlds are so rich and so detailed. I would love to see how your storytelling would evolve and adapt to multi-episode form. That would be something to see. Is that in our future? And also Ratatouille 2.
Actually, yeah, I have a project that it's hard to explain, but it would lend itself to multiple episodes, and it has to do with the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco.
You've been talking about 1906 for a long time.
Yeah, and there's a lot of BS on the internet about the reasons it didn't happen. They said that, you know, the budget went out of control or something like that. We never got that far. I mean, the problem with it is, the more you research that time, the more amazing it is, and the stories that are happening are insane. And the deeper I dug, the more stuff I was like, this has to be in it. But it has to be big like a movie. It can't just be this little thing. So it was kind of like you were packing up stuff for a balloon, and you've got everything you want in the balloon, right? Now you got everything there, and you go, okay, let's go. And it doesn't lift off, and it doesn't lift off. So you start chucking stuff out of the balloon. And oh, oh no, okay. You know, and pretty soon you're starting to get liftoff, and now you're getting liftoff, but all the stuff that you love is on the ground. It's not, you're going away from it. You know, so that's what it was like, and I still am very interested in that story, but it has to be in a way that simultaneously exploits the detail of successive episodes and the size of a giant movie.
So if you were to make this on television, do you envision this as like a limited series? It's like 6 episodes, 8 episodes, or is this like a few season type of story?
It's probably like 8 episodes, yeah. But you know, it's got the greatest build ever. I mean, it's not just the earthquake; it's the fire after the earthquake. I mean, history books talk about tornadoes of fire, and that the wind created from the fire that fed the fire got to be like gale force. You know, I mean, I haven't seen that. I'd eat popcorn to that. Yeah.
So Anton Ego's final review is one of Pixar's most memorable scenes. How difficult was that speech to write, and when did you realize people absolutely loved that moment?
Well, it was a really bizarre thing. I got to that point in the movie, and we had to go. I mean, I didn't even record early on. I didn't even go scratch. I just would write a line and give it to the actors, and we did it. I mean, there was no hesitation because we were so far behind. But when I got to that part of the movie, they had some stuff planned in earlier versions where all the critics of Paris are at this table and they're all toasting Remy. And even though the movie is not remotely realistic, I didn't believe that for a second. You know, it seemed like, no, he would ask to see the chef and they wouldn't want to show him the chef. So maybe make everybody leave. And when I had the idea of the review, it was anti everything a summer movie is supposed to do, and especially animation. You're supposed to get faster and louder, and I got slower and quieter. And when I pitched the idea to the powers that be, I said, I don't know why, but I think this should be the ending. And where he reads this review and it's kind of soul searching. And they kind of went like this because, again, it's against everything that you're supposed to do from the standard playbook. But they kind of went, yeah, that feels right. And I had a really great secret weapon, and that's when Michael was doing the music, Michael Giacchino. Michael Giacchino. But he wrote a suite, and he wrote it for the orchestra just to do one take so that he could hear it. It wasn't the version that was going to be in the film. It was the soaring, da 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 da, And he did it, and it was big, and it's romantic, and he kind of goes, yeah, it's too romantic for, what you need. We'll do it. We'll play with it and tone it down a little bit. But I had that on a recording, one take of that super romantic version, and I put my voice, bad British accent, reading that scene, and the secret weapon was his romantic music. The romantic version of it was perfect, and it ended up being the thing, I think, that helped sell the idea. And I was rewriting it all the way up until the time we recorded. I rewrote it on the plane, like 3 times on the plane. Then I landed, went to the hotel, and wrote it 2 more times. Just trying to get it to be right. And I couldn't have asked for a better person to enact it than Peter O'Toole. I mean, that was like fantasy stuff.
So that scene is literally perfect.
Oh, thanks.
I think, by the way, I'm not alone on this. Like, that scene is amazing. So then you jumped into something called Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol.
Yeah.
Which I think we'll have an image. It should go up. So what made Mission Impossible the right project for you for your live action debut?
Well, again, I was trying to do 1906, and it just was, the more I tried to do it, the more it was too big. And finally, I realized that, I don't want my headstone to be, he tried to make 1906, So I looked around for things to do that were already kind of ready to go. And Tom Cruise had seen Incredibles and invited me over to his house, and we had this amazing 2-hour, 3-hour talk just about movies. And his knowledge is extensive. And we had a very good time, and he said, look, if you ever want to do live action, I'd love to do something with you. So that popped up, and of all the things, I love spy movies, and that was a chance to do a spy movie with Tom Cruise, so how do you say no to that?
What was your reaction when you're filming and Tom is doing, like, the stunts, and, I mean, they're insane what he does. He's an amazing actor. But
one of one.
Yeah. What was it like for you, though, when he's doing some of that stuff? Because it has to be scary.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing it, and we were prepping it, and he was practicing being on the building with this climbing expert who was out there. And we were just kind of hanging around and talking while he's out there. And suddenly I hear, woo! And I see him go outside the window swinging past, and then I hear a crash. Like, and I'm like, ah, he's dead, the star is dead. And then I hear him laughing. Like, ah, like that was, you know, I screwed that one up, you know. And it was, so we were filming that stuff. We were originally thinking we might only get a few shots in IMAX. Like maybe 2 or 3, and we'll just do the rest with special effects. So we had to bash out these giant windows, double pane windows. And they were like, okay, but only 3, and you got to put them back exactly like they were. And we're like, okay, we'll do it. So we start doing it, and we go, yeah, we could probably get the shot over here. And pretty soon, it's 37 windows we're shot. And we shot everything on the building. The only ones we didn't do on the buildings were ones that were looking up, because you can do that on a piece of anything. But anything that's wide or looking down or anything like that, all that stuff is real. And it was, we were filming it. There was one time where we were filming it and I was dead asleep in my hotel. It was like 4 in the morning, and suddenly I go, you know, and I realized my star is swinging around on this little wire a mile up into the air, and what am I doing? You know, this is insane. But he's the producer, so you can't tell him no.
Jumping into your newest project called Ray Gunn. So for people who are just hearing about Ray Gunn for the first time here at Comic-Con, what do you want to tell people about the movie?
Well, the elevator pitch would be it's Buck Rogers meets the Maltese Falcon. So it's desperate characters in sort of an alternate future. And you know, this stuff is kind of hard to explain, especially because it's a mystery. You don't want to give anything up. Why don't we just show the first 7 minutes?
You're the director. I guess let's show the first 7 minutes. Give a huge thank you to Netflix for letting us show the first 7 minutes, because I don't even think there's a trailer out yet.
There is not.
Yeah, so, you know, there you go. What do you want to tell more about this scene, or what else would you like to tell people about it? Because you've been working on this for like 30 years.
Well, I haven't been working on it for 30 years. I've been waiting for it 30 years. There's a difference. I would have happily made it a long time ago, but you have to have someone pay for it. So this one was a hard one to get from being planned to actually being made. And it sat for a long time. We joke that it's kind of like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's like where dead projects go to rot, I guess. So it was in a filing cabinet. There wasn't that much work done on it. There was a lot of artwork and stuff, but it sat for a long time. But I always liked the idea and always felt like it would be a really good movie, and I was able to get it out of the studio that had it, and shop it around a bit.
How can I word this carefully? If hypothetically I'd seen this movie, and I don't want to say too much more, I would just say that I wanted to push pause like 30 times during it because of the level. Hypothetically,
yeah.
The level of detail that is on some of these shots is just like staggering, and I know how difficult it is on like some of these wide city shots where everything is just so like I just want to see everything in the background, and that takes time and money. So how the F did you pull off what's in some of this movie? Because it's really unbelievable.
One of the nicest things about making movies is you get to work with a lot of creative people. So when you had this premise, there were a lot of ideas about how to flesh out the city and the environment, because the whole movie pretty much takes place in the city. It's an urban movie, even though it's a sci-fi fantasy thing, it's also urban. And so there was a lot of thoughts, and the amount of real estate you have in a movie is like this, but the world is like that. So you end up being able to populate all kinds of ideas. And I think that you can look at the characters and where we want you to look, but you can also let your eye drift, and there's going to be something for it. Yeah, yeah. So
We do have another video question. It's from, I believe, someone named Michael.
oh.
Hey Brad, this is Michael Giacchino, first time caller but long time listener, big fan, and I had a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. Mainly I wanted to know, what was the first movie you saw that made you actually say to yourself, that, I want to do that? And how old were you when you first saw it? And did you have any idea as to how you would do that? So that's one question. The second question is, can you tell me what Incredibles 3 is about? Because apparently I hear you're going to be making an Incredibles 3, which is very exciting. So let's talk about that. What do you think?
Oh boy. Well, the first one is, I think from the very beginning I was trying to make movies. I didn't figure this out until much later. But
I want to hear it from your mouth. I want to hear it right from your mouth. Hey, everyone. How great is that guy?
So the very first drawings I did were very crude, but they were meant to be viewed in order. And so I figured out much later that I was trying to make movies really early, and I just didn't have the equipment or ability to do it. And but my family was a movie-going family. They liked to go to movies and discuss movies afterwards. And I remember my parents talking about Hitchcock, that, you know, like, why were Hitchcock's films better? So that was the first time I'd heard a director discussed. And
You gotta get closer.
Into the mic.
oh, this way.
Yes.
Okay, so so anyway, we were a movie family. We saw movies, and I loved movies always.
So those drawings you did, were they like storyboards, or was it actually an animated sequence?
They were the crudest. They were not anything special drawing-wise. Circle for the head, line for mouth, dots for eyes. But the thing that was unique about them was they were meant to be seen in a certain order, and I would tell the story, and I would pull the thing, pages like that. You know, you go.
And it seems like, though, the most important thing is your parents encouraged you. There was something you wanted
They
to do.
took me to
and they
see a
backed
movie
you.
more than once, which my grandparents thought was really indulgent. But my mom was like, he's getting something out of it. And when I was 11, I saw The Jungle Book here in San Diego, actually. And that made me go, how do I do that? Because it seemed, you'd see, my parents would have parties, and there would be a bunch of Forest of Legends. My parents, Spanish Inquisition. So my parents would have parties, and I remember the Forest of Legs, and people kind of going, it's like, I don't want to become one of those lumbering things, you know? And then I heard a comedy album, which was Jonathan Winters being funny, and here was an adult who was being completely bonkers and being accepted. And then I saw Jungle Book, and I realized people are being paid to figure out how a panther moves, a stuffy panther. And that I went, wow, growing up is actually going to be really great. You know, let me at it.
Okay, so now tell us about Incredibles 3.
Thank you for asking that. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. It's directed by the guy who did the voice of Emile in Ratatouille, and he's a super talented guy named Pete Sohn, and he's going to do an amazing job. And I'm writing it with a co-writer, and I'm producing it also, co-producing it. So I'm involved, and I'm excited about it.
Who's doing the music?
It's actually the ghost of Jerry Goldsmith.
You're in much better hands then.
Yeah, I don't know. What are you doing?
I'm open.
All right, well, we'll talk about it.
All right.
So I am so curious though what your shorthand is between the two of you in terms of like writing music or in terms of music for a movie. So maybe you could talk about what it was like doing Gunn, and you know, how early on did you hear about this project? How early on were you thinking about the score, and what is that collaboration like?
Oh man, I heard about this in 2003. So we were working on The Incredibles, and we were just talking about, oh, what are the things you want to work on? What do you got coming up? This and that. And he ran down a litany of things, and one of them was Gunn. And I heard the story about how, you know, he tried to make it and it couldn't get done. And he's like, I hope one day that's a movie that we're going to be able to make. And so that's been living in my head since then, you know. So when you do that, your head is sort of like your brain just sort of slowly works on it in the background. But for me, when I come into a movie, and especially with Brad, what I'd love to do is just find out, okay, who are these characters? Who are these people? What do they need? What do they want? I don't ever, for instance, for this movie, it wasn't about sitting down and writing a detective score. It was about writing a score for Ray. Like, who's Ray? And what does he need? And what does he want? What does he not get? You know, he's got this really kind of messed up life in a lot of ways. And how do we then reflect that? And then that's how I begin writing music, understanding that. Because if I can get into the emotional space of a character, feel what it is that they're feeling, then I can do something.
Yeah, and that's how we talk about it. We talk about story.
Yeah,
we
always
don't talk about music per se. I mean, I usually collect a bunch of things that seem kind of like what I'm looking for, but it's a variety of things, and I just kind of put the pile at him, and he listens to it, and then he puts it away. And whatever residue sticks, and he goes into it and creates the soundscape. But we end up talking about story a lot, and his notes on story are always good notes. They're smart. So I like talking to him about things early.
So one of the things when I was looking through the credits of the film, I noticed Ben Burtt's name. And which, if anyone's familiar with Star Wars, look him up.
The first one.
Yeah, exactly. But also, you have like a all-star lineup of people that worked on this movie. Can you sort of mention the various people that you pulled in to do this? It's almost like they wanted to work with you.
Well, a lot of them have worked on the other films. So you know, when you do this stuff, you end up being really impressed by a lot of people, and those are the people you want to keep close and kind of keep adding to their numbers. So Pete Sohn, who his first film that he worked on was Iron Giant, and he did a lot of storyboarding and animation in Incredibles. He did storyboarding and animation in Incredibles 2. He boarded the sequence with Jack chasing the raccoon. He did the kiss in Incredibles where Bob and Helen kiss, which was, believe it or not, technically really complicated at the time, and made it this beautiful emotional scene. So he's a multi-talent. He is one of the people. I had Tony Fucilli, who worked on everything, and designed, ran animation in Iron Giant, Incredibles, blah, blah, blah. He's involved in Ray, and he's involved in Incredibles 3. And, you know, this guy, and it's a lot of people that have worked on other things and done amazing work. And we had an amazing group of storyboard artists, some of which were now directing, but they wanted to do a sequence or something in the film. So they were constantly coming in, and I had this murderer's row of storyboard artists doing this amazing work. Yeah, so it was really gratifying.
That's what I'm trying to point out. It's like, almost, like I said, I think everyone wanted to work with you. It's been a little while since you've made a film.
Too long.
Yeah, but it's, whenever Brad makes a movie, there's a line of people that want to make it with him. He is one of the best sort of leaders, one of the best creative leaders that I know that I have worked with. And there's nobody like him, nobody I know that can just get an entire room full of people just like this to charge up a hill right behind him without even, they just trust, okay, if that's where he wants to go, we go. And that's everything.
Let's go, everybody, let's go! We're marching up the hill. What hill is this?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Turkey Hill ice cream, I think.
So noir has such a specific musical vocabulary. How much did you want it to honor that versus subvert it for a world with aliens and multimedia stars in it?
I think we did both, didn't we?
Yes, it's really mixed. It's got everything. It's got like 50s sci-fi in it. It's got very like 30s, 40s noir in it. It's got some slight jazz, and yet you know, my biggest concern was like, I did not want it to feel like The Incredibles. I wanted it to be different, stand apart. That's very important for me, working on things. And again, why I love working with Brad, because everything he does is like a hard left turn into some other area that he hasn't explored yet. So that's exciting for anyone who gets to work on the film, because then you're trying out your new muscles. So I think that this film is really, at its core, a very emotional score, but it's got a lot of action, a lot of fun, and hopefully it feels like its own thing.
So one of the things that I'm so impressed by is your camera moves and just there's like the way you direct, but especially like the camera moves and the way you stage sequences in animation. Can you sort of talk about that and the way it is behind the scenes and how you figure out what it's going to look like?
Well, animation was sort of my gateway drug to live action. And once I had to make decisions for an animated film that I was making when I was 11, you have to decide, you're drawing it, but you still have to decide, is this in a close-up or a medium shot or whatever. And so you start to learn the language of film, and once you start to see it, you start to recognize it in other people's work, and it becomes really inspiring, and you start heading towards certain filmmakers. And so I think that that's one of the things. The weird thing is when I started doing animation, people kept saying, you know, you kind of stage things like live action. And then I go and do a live action movie and they go, you kind of stage things like animation. And it's like, it's all film, man. It's just film, you know? So it's the same language. It's just how you get there is a little different. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what technology did you use on this that perhaps you hadn't used before, or is it the same software? Like, how did you actually physically make it versus some of the others?
Well, I mean, you know, Pixar was pretty cutting edge, so I can't say that I'm using stuff that I've never used before, but the problems are always new, and so it's the film itself. This had a much narrower range where you could be. I mean, it was really easy to do too little, and it was really easy to do too much. And the thing is you want the characters to be hardy enough to go through action scenes and comedic scenes and get all the juice out of them. You don't want them to be stiff. But at the same time, if the scene turns emotional, you want that to work too. So you can't be so goofy that you become not believable. And what you're going for is creating, whether it's live action or animation, you want the audience to feel like there's a whole life here and you're only seeing a slice of it. But there's stuff that happened to this character before, and there's stuff that's going to happen to him or her later. And it's about making that believable.
So you have a great voice cast in this. For people that don't realize, maybe you can talk about them, but I'm always curious, like, did you do any sort of test where you were laying like Sam Rockwell's voice over something and just hearing it? Like, how did you decide on start, like?
Yeah, this is kind of true of all animated films, but if you have a voice that you think might work, you get clips of it from various things, and then you put it to images of the character. You have the character, and it's not animation, it's just still images, but you're seeing how the voice plays with that face. And when I was pitching Patton for Ratatouille, he had this very funny thing where he goes to Outback Steakhouse, and he was so, you know, completely emotional about food. And we had all these things of Remy, you know, gesturing and making faces from various storyboards, and we kind of cut them to generally fit the attitude that he had in the bit. So you were hearing him, you were seeing Remy, and seeing, does that voice sound good coming out of that body? And it was perfect. So that's what you do. And we had clips of Sam. I mean, we all loved Sam's work. It's not like he's unknown. But the same with Scarlett. And it was just, you know, perfect. Done deal.
So one of the things about You know, actually, I'm really curious.
Tom Waits. Ira.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom Waits, come on.
Yeah. Ira is the alien that you see in the scene, you know, when they're doing the desk.
Yeah.
And,
She's work pro bono.
Yeah.
and by the way, for people, who do you voice in this?
There's a couple of characters. You don't need to. Hopefully, you won't get pulled out of it.
I actually think people like when you voice characters. Would you like to possibly?
I don't do that voice.
So, I'm so curious when you finally saw the finished version of this, how did it compare to that thing that you've been imagining for so long?
Well, it was different because for the longest time I wanted to do it as hand-drawn feature, and I still think it would have been great that way. But I have no objection. I love working in CG as well, and there are things that you can do in CG that are more difficult in hand-drawn animation. But we had an aggressive schedule. The studio that was originally going to do it in Spain wasn't able to do it because of pipeline issues. So we went to a studio in Montreal called Cinesite, and they really, we put the bar pretty high, and they were not intimidated by it. They did a great job. So I'm happy that it's a big movie. It's got size to it, and it was a lot of choices had to be made, and they had to be made pretty quickly, and it doesn't look like we cut any corners. You know, we worked our butts off to get it all on the screen, but I'm really happy that it is big and it's unusual for animation, I think.
Could you talk about how did you establish like the visual aesthetic that you wanted with the camera and like the lighting choices, like the actual design?
Well, I love the syntax of movies. It's kind of a dream language, and moving the camera is one of the things I love best about CG. It was being able to move the camera rather than kind of look like you're moving the camera, which is what it was in hand-drawn. But being able to follow things through a shot and have the equivalent of lens selection and all that made it much easier for me to go from Incredible or Ratatouille and Ghost Protocol than it would have been if I went from Iron Giant to Ghost Protocol, because it was like working with real lenses and being able to move the camera in space.
Because we're basically at the end of the panel, so I have to ask, I'll just ask both of you, besides Incredibles 3, which you're writing, do you know what the next thing you're going to do is? And when are you directing again?
I will be, thank you. Yes, there's a few things, and one big thing that keeps getting closer and closer to that start line. It takes a long time to get these things up on their feet and going, but it keeps inching closer, and it's getting so close. So hopefully very, very soon. Hopefully very soon. But in the meantime, you can go and see Spider-Man Brand New Day. Coming out soon.
Yeah, I know what I want to do, but I'm not ready to talk about it. And it's a thing that we've talked about doing before, and it's live action, but there's animation in it. Yeah.
This is the thing you're writing right now.
Yes.
Look at Steve's putting it together in his head.
No, we did an interview before, and he said to me he was writing something, and I'm just trying to figure out like where that's at. But
I'm also working on Incredibles 3. So
yeah, I really, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but Gunn really is fantastic, and I know that you see me sitting here, and it's like
hypothetically,
yeah, like you know what I mean. But I assure you, the movie's fantastic. I hope Netflix doesn't get mad for me saying that, whatever. Ladies and gentlemen,
it's great. It's great.
Yeah, it's like, and as I said, like when I was watching it, I just wanted to hit pause so many times because of the level of detail. Ladies and gentlemen, please, Brad Bird. We're have a fantastic night. I will be back here in Hall H tomorrow for something called Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.